You are most welcome back to the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. I think I'm repeating this every week. Week 13 was a bit bonkers, a bit nuts. And where do we begin? Nobody knows anything from what I can figure out about the NFL season anymore. We do know some things. Some things we get right, some things we get wrong. A lot of looks all over the shop lately. Joined as ever, top right of your screen. If you're not watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, Mr. Drew Dinsick, a.k.a. the Whale Capper. Beautiful shock jock kind of setup. If you're watching him on screen right now, Howard Stern would be so proud. Rob Pizolla at the bottom right of the screen hasn't really got the shock jock look, but we know Rob's not a shock jock. It's just not his style. And Germany's finest, all the way from Western Germany, Mr. Fabian Sommer. Guys, before I go into week 13, we won't spend too long on week 13. I think it's kind of been done elsewhere. We have a pretty cool sign-up offer, new sign-up offer at Matchbook because it is Christmas and we do want to give that bit more back. Right now, if you bet 10 at Matchbook, you get 10 within 24 hours, which is pretty cool. You want to place your bets on NFL, football, horse racing, Champions League, wherever the hell you want to spend it, you get 10 back on your next bet. 18s only. This unfortunately applies to just new customers only. But hey, if you're already at Matchbook, you're getting terrific value as ever. Terms and conditions apply even. Check out matchbook.com for further details. Back to my team, and we'll get to the content survey in a second. That is just flashed up on the screen. We are also doing a Matchbook content survey. So if you are watching us quite regularly or listening to us, let us know. Get in touch. The URL is matchbook.com/promo/survey. Let us know what we're doing. Be nice. What do we do well? What do we not do so well? Who do you want to see more of? What do you want to see more of? We are an open book, so let us know. Get in touch. The URL is there, matchbook.com/promo/survey. All right, bit of housekeeping done there. Drew Dinsick, week 13 in the books. There's one bet I wanted to talk to you about in particular because you were very warm on the over in the Patriots and Chargers. Okay, so obviously one team gets out in front, 35-0 towards the end of the third quarter. The Patriots, Bill Belichick flummox a rookie quarterback. Where have we heard this one before? But Drew, I'll be honest, I missed the early games on Sunday. I came home and I was looking at the live total in that game. And at the time, 35-0, Chargers getting the ball back. There was about 1:20 left of the third quarter. Total was 51.5. Remember now, 35. And I just said, I got to be back in the unders here, especially since I had an overs position. And it just, to me, spoke, potentially backup quarterbacks in, which we did see for the Patriots. Justin Herbert would not have scored in the Patriots until Tuesday came. And it just seemed like one. And are you spotting anything in play at the moment, Drew, with these blowout games? There aren't too many, but I just don't think models are kind of catching up in play enough.
Yeah, I think there were probably a couple. I agree that was a nice time to take a live under. That was obviously a winner. And honestly, the remaining 10 points that the Patriots scored at that point, they were aided by a 60-yard punt return. And, they were pretty clearly just trying to run out that game, which, by the way, is not something we've always seen from Bill Belichick. There are for sure games in the historical record where he's been up by 4 or 5 touchdowns, and they continue to put their foot on the gas. They notably beat the Titans, I think, 59-0 in the snow one year in Foxborough. I can remember they beat the Cardinals similarly, like 50-something to 0 or 50-something to 7. So, there is some historical precedent of Belichick continuing to run up the score. And I don't hate when coaches do that because as you kind of look across the playoff landscape right now, there is a muddy mess for the wild card spots. There is not a lot of separation between these teams for seeding and or who even gets into the playoffs. And one of the tiebreakers is point differential. And there can entirely come to a situation where you're on the bubble 7 to 8 seed for the playoffs, and it comes down to whether or not you've been able to run up the score on some people. I mean, honestly, the Browns are in a little bit of a bad spot because they've won a bunch of close games and they've lost a handful of blowouts. And if that ends up being the differentiating factor, they're going to be pretty, kicking themselves for not, trying to score more points or not trying to play better, late game defense in a couple of games like the Tennessee Titans game where they had a clear and obvious victory. They should have won that game by, I don't know, 20 something points based on the way they played, but it ended up a much narrower margin. So I guess I would say in general, in a blowout, it can cut both ways. You have to probably have a little bit better feel for what are the motivations of the teams. What is, what's really at stake. And I agree, though, with that Patriots-Chargers game, it felt very unlikely that the Chargers were going to manifest any points, especially the way the Patriots defense was playing. Their game plan was perfect for that one. And, it's a shame that one came up just short of the pre-flop over, but so it goes.
Yeah, I kind of thought that Anthony Lynn might actually take out Justin Herbert, but then again, Anthony Lynn doesn't really do kind of, normal stuff. Rob Pizolla, I don't know if you've anything to add on that, but how was week 13 anyway for you, man?
Week 13 was great. It was one of my better weeks of the season, which was nice. Unfortunately, lost a couple of the bigger plays that I had, which would have been on the Falcons and on the Cardinals last week, or else it could have been a very good week overall, but can't complain. To your point, Sully, about the live odds right now and things of that nature, I do definitely think later in games there are things that are not being accounted for right now by just the generic models, especially team tendencies. Some teams get, uber conservative late in a game. Some get very aggressive, and I don't think that those are incorporated. And in fact, I love betting the NFL just in general, and I love our pre-match or pre-game wagers here as well. But there's huge opportunities in game and second half markets as well. If I could go back, I probably would just focus on second half and probably have a really good run in the NFL these days with some of the numbers that they're hanging out there. So certainly, I know we focus on the pregame side of things, for obvious reasons, but there are a lot of in-game opportunities available nowadays as well.
Yeah, and look, I kind of just speak from personal experience now, Rob, because maybe it was about 10 years ago that I was actually trading those games live with a sports book. And, you were probably trading 2 games at a time without any major models. You probably had 1 or 2 small kind of Excel sheets to kind of tell you where to go. But nowadays, they are very much automated, as sportsbook have terrific quants teams. And, it's the same with tennis betting and other things. They're just clicking, where in the field, who has the ball, what's the donage. And they're not really kind of paying attention to coaches taking out quarterbacks. That there isn't that kind of care or kind of craftsmanship going into it. So maybe definitely one to watch. Suma, it's rare that you don't have a winning best bet on the Matchbook pod. You went against Drew last week. He had that Sean McVay thing. You kind of had the Cardinals +3 as more of a numbers angle, and also on insights you didn't lose, but you pushed. I think you got the worst of the number. The Dolphins -12, but I think anyone who shopped around on Saturday and Sunday was getting 11, 10.5. So hopefully they just got a better number. So yeah, so it was a mixed bag of a weekend for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my insights column was a perfect example of why it's so important to get the best of the number each week. I was 99% confident that Ryan Fitzpatrick would play after Tua got in 2 limited practices. So I was fine with taking -12 for the inside column. And then all of a sudden, Tua Tagovailoa plays, and there were some, I think, -10s available on Sunday morning. So yeah, that's the difference between 1 unit and 0 units.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go that way. Drew, you want to jump back in before we moved on, man?
Well, I was just gonna, it's a little the in-play stuff. If you think about trying to beat a pre-flop market, you're betting against an enormous amount of information.
Yes.
A huge number of bettors who all have models, who all have opinions, right? It's 1 versus a million. Whereas when you're betting an in-play market, it's you versus the algorithm that is supporting that live product. And it's 1v1. And I do think your fundamental point is sound, right? You're going to do better betting 1v1 than you're going to do betting 1v a million.
Yes. General. Yeah, absolutely. It's a terrific point, and definitely someone to watch. It's almost a good thing because obviously I work with Matchbook, so I can't actually have an account, and I just find there's probably way too much sharper people maybe on the Matchbook, whereas compared to Sportsbook. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. While there's plenty of value, there's a lot of sharp people at Matchbook have their money involved with the NFL bets. Okay, guys, coming up on today's show, we are going to look at the Ravens versus Browns Monday Night Football, Steelers against the Bills, which is arguably the game of Week 14, Colts Raiders, Chiefs versus Dolphins. We will do any other bet section. We will go top dogs as well and best bets. Okay, Let's start with Monday Night Football, Ravens against Browns. Now, obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, UK time. The Browns obviously played Tuesday Night Football. They're pretty kind of used to that now at this stage. They dismantled the Dallas Cowboys. No major shock there. Opening line, it hasn't even come out on Matchbook yet, but even just in the offshore sportsbook, it is a pick, and 45.5 is the total. Drew, I mean, look, we talked last couple of weeks about Ravens. The Ravens are 7-5 now. There was a buy low spot. There probably still is a buy low spot, but can they get right here against the Browns? I was kind of down on the Browns last week. They had a big win against Tennessee, but what did we really learn from that game? Did we learn enough to be back in the Browns in this one?
Well, I think we learned a decent amount in that one, and it's not to back the Browns, in my opinion, at least. If I had to do just a quick autopsy on both of those games, for the Browns game, I would say that was a true test for Baker Mayfield. He was going up against a defense that could not get pressure on him, and it was entirely up to him to be the offense and to show us what he's capable of doing with the weapons at his disposal under no pressure. And he did that. He did amazing. He was incredible in that first half, and truly his best performance probably as a pro to this point in his career. So hats off to him for showing that he is a guy that can perform with no pressure. This is a hugely different setup here, because in general, the Ravens have had no problem generating pressure via the blitz this season. Granted, the quick autopsy of last night's game, I was surprised that they really couldn't generate much pressure against Andy Dalton, especially going up against that Cowboys offensive line that was missing Zach Martin, that really hasn't played well since some of their early season injuries. That's a mash unit of a line, and the Ravens really couldn't get much pressure. It was disappointing. And in fact, it looked like potentially some of the big bodies on that D line, Brandon Williams, Calais Campbell, these are guys that are still recovering from their COVID illness. And it's possible that they're not quite game fit yet, which, matching up against the Browns team that can absolutely run the ball down your throat is a hair concerning. All that said, the Ravens match up well in terms of how they would like to attack the Browns. The Browns are not an especially, that's not a good defense, really, top to bottom. And I saw a lot of the kind of the hallmark best of the Ravens playbook from 2019 in their game plan last night against the Cowboys. We've kind of been waiting for them to implement some more of the unique running schemes, the misdirection in the running game that was so effective last year. And we saw a bunch of that last night, and it's exciting. I mean, Lamar Jackson was explosive. They were willing to put him in harm's way. And I think they, realistically, this was the plan all along, try to peak late in the season, recognizing that their final 5 games of the season are relatively easy. So I think in general, I bought in on the Ravens at 18-1 to win the AFC before their game yesterday, expecting that they were going to look good, they were going to cover, and that was effectively a bet on this game on Monday night. I'm effectively betting that they're going to beat the Browns, put themselves in position for a playoff spot, because their last 3 games are against the Jags, the Giants, and the Bengals. They should reasonably win all 3 of those. I know the Giants are a little friskier than we expected, but those are 3 wins in my book. So if they get this win against the Browns, they effectively finish 11-5. They're in the wild card mix. And once you get past the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC, it is a murky mess. There is not a clear second best team. The Chiefs have shown, even though they're clearly the best, they should clearly be favored by, a field goal to a touchdown over every other AFC team on a neutral field. They still, aren't exactly as focused as they were last year. There's a little bit of championship-itis on that squad. They're playing down to the likes of the Panthers and the Broncos in a primetime game. So somebody could surprise them, which would open up the door wide open for the Ravens, I think. And at 18-1, they may have to do the hard work themselves. They'll probably be a 7-point dog if they end up in Kansas City at some point. But that's what, plus 250 on the money line. So I'll take 18-1 and see if we can get a little chaos in the AFC here. And as far as this particular game goes, Ravens-Cleveland, this total at 45.5 doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I would have made this 48. There has been a ton of weather in Cleveland this year, especially, and it's worth following the weather. It's also worth. I'm assuming that Wyatt Teller, who was put on the COVID list, who's a fantastically important piece of that offensive line for the Browns, I'm assuming he was put on via contact and not actually confirmed tested positive himself, and he will be available for that game. But I'm going to wait for an over on that game, and pending on the weather. But I think the Ravens are the right side.
Yeah, we also stress that those markets are forming, and like 45.5 may not necessarily be there when they open with the majority of the books, but that is the early look there. And Suma, speaking of totals, you were very warm on the over in Tennessee at home to Cleveland last week, and that was never really in doubt either.
That was the perfect bet, I would say. It was over, I think, with 10 minutes to go in the third quarter. Perfect game, even though we had a bad game script. I was a little bit afraid that the Browns would just run out the clock and the Titans struggle to move the ball downfield, but the Browns defense was a hot mess as well. So, that was a very easy bet at no sweat at all.
Yeah, and would you be kind of aligned with Drew here, saying if it's 45.5, and yes, it's a divisional matchup, and we're not 100% sure about the weather in Ohio on Monday night, but that would be a good enough look for you early doors?
I would definitely look towards the over here and not at the under. But I think, depending on the opening number, I would prefer the Ravens in this one. I think this is a superb matchup for them. The Browns are offensively built in a very specific way. They have a strong offensive line. They have, I think, the highest run rate in the league after the Patriots on early downs. They want to run the ball, and everything is tied together with their run game. All of those play action looks, the bootlegs, everything is tied together with the run game. And Baker Mayfield is a quarterback who needs this kind of passing offense. He needs to be put on play action, on bootlegs. He needs to have some space towards opposing defenders. And this is basically a very specific way for their offense to function overall. And it helps when they face a very soft run defense. And in recent weeks, they faced those soft run defenses, for example, like the Raiders, or the Texans, the Jaguars, and they were able to move the ball very well. Titans last week. But this time, like Drew mentioned, the Ravens front seven didn't look very right last night, but I think they have another week of practice where those guys can get conditioned. Until week 9, before the Ravens lost Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams and LJ Ford, they ranked second in the league in run defense in terms of EPA per play. Now those guys are all back in the lineup. Their pass defense is very good. The Browns don't have the wide receivers or don't have enough wide receivers to challenge opposing cornerbacks one-to-one all game long. That's a very good matchup for Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and Jimmy Smith. And when the Ravens can stop the one on early downs, they are going to get the Browns into very tough situations on second and down, third and down. And that's, like I've mentioned, not a style of offense that the Browns want to play. So they get a lot of matchup troubles against the Ravens, in my opinion. We saw it this year against the Ravens in the first game and against the Steelers, whose defenses matched up perfectly with the style of offense the Browns want to play. And I think the Browns scored less than 10 points in both matchups. I really don't see a path where the Browns can jump an early lead, can play with a lead, can get their run game easily going. On the other side, the Browns defense, they are well below average right now. No Denzel Ward, no Ronnie Harrison. Their only strength on defense is Myles Garrett, and he's going to go against Orlando Brown, the best offensive lineman of Baltimore. The Browns' run defense got gashed in recent weeks by lots of not so good running offenses. So I think Lamar Jackson and the running game, they're going to have a field day. They get Mark Andrews back. On both sides of the ball, I think this is a very bad matchup for the Browns, who have played a terrific season. But against the Ravens, I don't think they stand a lot of chances. And I think most certainly bet the Ravens here, depending on the number. But I think at Pick'em or -1.5, what it is right now, it would be a play for me on the Ravens.
All right, Rob Pizolla, I'm conscious it's obviously very early doors. We haven't got that much time to really dig into that Ravens performance last night, but early leans from Drew with the over 45.5. and Summa with Baltimore. Well, what are you thinking here?
I'm probably more neutral side here, and I do understand all the points that Summa just made in regards to the matchup on both sides of the ball. Maybe this is just recency bias, but I thought the Ravens' 17-point win last night was extremely unimpressive, to be honest, to the point where I might have actually downgraded them after a 17-point win. The Cowboys' defense, like Mike Nolan, is just such a horrible defensive coordinator. The Ravens had running lanes all over the place. Like, there's no gap control on that defense altogether. I imagine a smarter coaching staff like the Browns, although they struggle to defend the run in general, they probably go all in on stopping the run in this game and try to force Lamar Jackson to beat them through the air. And I'm just not sure the Ravens offense is capable of doing that right now. I mean, he still is very inaccurate on most of his throws. It showed quite a bit last night. And on the other side of things, like the Browns, they still have that, I guess the general narrative around them is like, their point differential is not great. This team is a fraud. I don't really buy into that a whole lot because they played 3 games at home this year, which were in horrible weather conditions against defenses where they probably could have put up a large amount of points. There's the Raiders, the Texans, and then they played the Eagles, who aren't very good. So I think the point differential is very misleading on that side of things. And personally, maybe another week gets this Ravens front seven back into shape. But Calais Campbell, to me, last night was awful. Like, he shouldn't have been on the field in general, looked very hobbled. I mean, coming back from an injury on top of being on the COVID list as well. I'm not sure this is the same Ravens defense. And if Jimmy Smith is out for them as well, they struggled to contain the Cowboys receiving core last night. Andy Dalton was moving the ball quite consistently. It's just that Greg Zuerlein couldn't hit a kick to save his life. By the way, like, he has to drop Greg the leg at this point. Like, the guy doesn't even have a leg anymore, right? He can't use that. But I don't know. I'm just I'm not as optimistic on Baltimore going forwards as I think Drew and Summa are. Maybe that can change for me with a game against Cleveland, but I think a pick'em is a fair price for this. I think the total is a bit low. So I mean, if I was playing something in this game, it's going to be the over. Yeah. I don't think the Ravens defense is going to completely clamp down on this Browns offense.
Yeah, they'll get plenty of those. I can't believe Mike Nolan is still in the league. It's just when you reminded me of it there a second ago, I was like, yeah, he got the job at Dallas. And correct me if I'm wrong, he was also once the defense coordinator with the Packers, and the head coach there was Mike McCarthy. And Mike McCarthy was offensive coordinator with the 49ers. And who was the head coach? Mike Nolan. I tell you, Drew Dinsick, it's jobs for the boys. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, and you look to a head coach and who they're putting around them in terms, they're the CEO of the franchise effectively. And if you're making decisions like Mike Nolan is a good defensive coordinator, he's my guy. That puts into question all of your decision making, really. But in Rob's points are fair. The 17-point win did feel a little fraudulent, I guess. They forced one Dallas punt all game. And yet somehow Dallas only had 17 points. They really needed to get more pressure on Dalton, and they just couldn't do it. And I think a lot of it was the defense is a little out of shape because so many guys have missed practice for 2 weeks. And oh, by the way, like, Dallas played up in a lot of that game, to be fair. Like, I thought they played well, and they had 13 days rest. How much rest did they have? They basically had a second bye week to prepare for that game, and they still couldn't keep that within one score. So it does go both ways, and I do hang a lot of it on the Dallas defense. But real quickly, the one other thing that helps the Ravens and in this game, maybe helps you over too, is you have a real confident Baker Mayfield coming into a primetime game here, and I love the idea of him walking in with swagger and just throwing nonsense to Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters has how many touchdowns in this game? 2, 3? I mean, it's tough to put a number on that one. But just the idea of being against a real overconfident Baker Mayfield makes me pretty happy.
Yeah, Rob, do you want to jump back in there quickly?
Well, we do have this precedent for Baker, and if the Ravens generate pressure, they're going to have success. We know that, right? I mean, look at the two blowout losses for the Browns this year. It was the Ravens in the backfield all game. It was the Steelers in the backfield all game, and Baker couldn't do anything. So if front seven returns to form, it is a major, major problem for the Browns, plain and simple. And this is not just this year. If we go back and look at Baker's career as a whole, he just does not fare well under pressure. He needs time in the pocket. So it's a matter of whether we think the Ravens front seven returns to form. And I'm just a little bit more skeptical, I think, than the other two here.
Okay, I think we'll do a recap of this after 4 games, but I think maybe the total at the moment of 45.5, the early doors total, is probably the best angle here. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about Sunday Night Football. Pretty good one here, a bit of a dandy. Current betting for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Buffalo Bills. You can see there on screen the money line. Steelers at 2.33. The Bills just under 1.7. The Bills laying 3 at the moment. That's been backed again since yesterday. But it's odds against the 2.03 and 46.5 is the total. Suma, I'll come to you here first. I know you have the Bills at a better number. I think you've got them at 2 or 2.5. Still plenty of 1.91 minus 2.5. But why are the Bills the side to be on in this one?
I think I got them at -2 yesterday. It moved very quickly overnight to almost 3 now. I think when we put everything together, both directions in which these two teams are heading right now, the injury situations for the Steelers defense, their inability on offense to get any kind of medium range or deep passing game going, and the way Josh Allen is playing right now, I think we can make a pretty good case that the Bills are the better team on a neutral field right now. And I really like the matchup for this upcoming week. The Steelers are also playing their 3rd game in 11 days. That might be something with them. Wouldn't overrate that, but of course something to keep in mind. The Steelers defense has been really good this year, but they played, I think, by a mile the easiest schedule in the entire league. In recent weeks, they played a Ravens backup offense, the Washington football team, the Bengals, and the Jaguars with Mike Glennon. So they have really played a cupcake schedule, and it's not like they are the cream of the cup in efficiency metrics right now. They are just barely at the top right now. And they lost Batu Pre. They lost their second linebacker. Steven Nelson, cornerback, is likely going to be out. Joe Hayden has a concussion. And the Bills are offensively completely on fire right now. And I don't really see a lot of paths that the Steelers defense can contain the Bills passing offense. The only passing offense that came close to the Bills this year was the Titans at Tennessee. And the Titans came up with a horrible game plan. They were trying to run the ball against the Steelers front. They got stymied on 1st and 2nd down, and it was really a bad game script. And then finally, at the end of the first half, they opened up their passing game, and they easily put up 24 points. And Brian Daboll, terrific season so far. I think he's one of the head coaching favorites this offseason to get a job. He's done a terrific job, and he basically is showing us every week that he calls his offense according to the opposing matchup. And if his offense cannot really run the ball well, he is going to call 80% passes. And I think the Bills don't really are good at running the ball. So I'm expecting a pass-heavy game plan once again. I think Josh Allen is going to throw the ball all over the field against this banged-up secondary. And on the other side, the Steelers had a lot of favorable game scripts this year. I just looked it up today. When the win percentage is below 20% for the Steelers, they had only 3% of their overall snaps in that kind of situation. So they don't really know how to play backed up this season. And I think when the Bills are able to score points, I don't really see a Big Ben and this current state of the Steelers offense to move the ball effectively down the field to get to a tight score. A lot of their offense right now is a quick passing game. Let those guys try to get anything underneath. Eric Ebron has hands of stone at the moment. He can't catch anything. Their run game is non-existent. The Bills' defense is getting healthier. They just got Matt Milano back against the Niners. They're in full strength. I think this is a bad matchup for the Steelers this week. I think their defense is going to get exposed, and I'm happy with the Bills at -2.
Rob Pizolla, you tweeted something along the lines of, sorry, Buffalo fans, but I am a believer. Are you a believer on Sunday night? I love those puns. Great.
Yeah.
But are you a believer on Sunday night, Rob?
I am. So I have been slowly becoming a believer. But I'm officially cemented in it now. And I think what's happening for me is there's a really underrated unit in this game, and it's the Buffalo defense for me. Like, we could say all we want about the Bills offense, which is very good, and we can talk about the Steelers, which, I mean, we've all seen the Steelers in a lot of prime time now in recent weeks. We kind of know what they are. It's like a league average offense, no real explosive plays. The defense is good, but as Suma mentioned, there's a bunch of injuries that are concerning for them. But the Bills defense, like, I'm not a big fan of using arbitrary endpoints here, but if we split the season up into two and we take the Bills' first 6 games and look at their last 5, it's night and day in terms of EPA per play on defense. And you look at those first 6 games of the season, they gave up 12 passing touchdowns. They only forced 2 interceptions. Last 5 games, they've only given up 4 passing touchdowns. They forced 6 interceptions. They're playing a lot better in terms of a pass defense right now. They get Matt Milano back last week, which really helped them against the 49ers. Like, everyone thought the 49ers were going to run all over the Bills, right? Oh, they're just going to hand it off all game and the Bills can't stop this. Well, that's not going to happen because Milano's a good run defender in general. And now you're going to have Buffalo playing very close to the line of scrimmage because they're just not – the Steelers aren't a threat to beat them deep. Ben's deep balls haven't been good in general. So that's going to help in the running game overall. I think Buffalo is a better team than Pittsburgh right now. Maybe when the Steelers are fully healthy and there's a few more wrinkles, I would probably take them just by looking at their roster on paper. But as it stands right now, I think the market has moved to where it should be in terms of a fair price. Now, we'll have to monitor the weather in Buffalo this week as well, because that's always a concern. If we get high winds, I think that's kind of going to favor the Steelers a little bit because it hurts the Bills' ability to throw it downfield a little bit more. But overall, there's nothing that's really too concerning for me right now. And as it stands, I like Buffalo in this game.
Tony, you made some very good points about the Buffalo defense, which, look, like you said, hasn't been talked about. Dinsick, where are you lying with this one? It's -3 at the moment on Buffalo. Would you be happy enough to lay it, or is the value gone?
No, see, I for sure would say this is a Steelers play or pass.
Okay.
I get the points that you guys are making about the Bills in general, and I agree that there is room to be enthusiastic, not just for them this season, but going forward, the way that Josh Allen is playing. You know, if they can somehow, they're probably not going to be able to keep Brian Daboll, but if they could somehow keep Daboll for another season, the Bills are a beautiful bet on for 2021. Like, they really will be quite awesome. This season, and the way I see these two teams, however, I don't 100% agree that they're even on a neutral. Clearly, the Steelers, even though they were on track for 16-0 undefeated season, blah blah, they weren't a 16-win team by strength, right? That was not ever really who they were. They were playing like a 12-win team, right? All you know, at best, right? But that's still a good team. 12-win team is still that's an elite team. Whereas the Bills I have grading closer to 10.5, 11-win team. So I do think there is some separation there between these two teams, with Pittsburgh being the better team. The injuries that Suma mentioned specifically on the defense are concerning for the Steelers here. And the Steelers are going to need a little bit of the elements to help neutralize this one, because if Josh Allen is, if he's dangerous in the deep passing game, then they're in trouble. Because the Steelers have lacked explosiveness. But this is a decent buy low spot on the Steelers, just because they've played 2 really ugly, sloppy games in standalone moments. The loss to the the loss to the Washington football team, I did not see that coming at all. I was blown away by how aggressive the line moved against them in the days, the day leading up to that game. Pretty clearly, if they were going to lose a game down the home stretch, that's the one they would want to lose because it's the one that they can lose and still hold on to the number 1 seed if they finish 15-1 and the Chiefs finish 15-1. So were they a little? This isn't the worst thing in the world if we lose, because then we don't have the questions every week about going undefeated, which we don't really want that pressure, but we don't lose the 1 seed. Yeah, sure. So, they didn't have the greatest game plan. There was lack of focus on the offense. Suma called out Eric Ebron for the cement hands, but what's going on?
Everyone had cement hands.
Juju Smith-Schuster. I think the last 2 weeks combined, are they over 20 drops? That's unheard of. I mean, and that's going to regress back to normal at some point, I would expect. And, Rob's point about the Bills defense is better than their overall season ranking is 100% true. Matt Milano absolutely matters. The Steelers, if they come in and think they're going to gain anything on the ground here, they're deluding themselves. They're going to have to get it all done through the air. They're going to have to pick on the side of the field where Trey White is not defending. But I think they can make some hay there, make some progress. I see this as a very close game. I think it should be a pick 'em. I don't think giving the Steelers 3 points is a fair price from a number standpoint. And I would, if I had to make a play, I would play the Steelers. I can't get involved in the over, even though I think this total is criminally low just because of the wind. It's probably going to be one that I'm going to look for a second half angle if we're seeing a sharp Steelers performance in the first half, if their defense is playing up in this game, if Josh Allen looks uncomfortable at all, if he's having trouble with accuracy because of the wind, then the Steelers are going to be a good second half bet for me. But I'm gonna stay off pre-flop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just a comment. So here's the thing for me with the Steelers. I feel like the last several weeks have all been buy low spots for the Steelers. Although it's kind of weird because you wouldn't say that about an undefeated team. But stemming back to the game that they played against Dallas, where I don't remember if it was DiNucci or Gilbert at quarterback, they couldn't put away the Cowboys. It was awful, horrible. So everything in general, and the game against the Ravens, with the Ravens missing all those players, you would say okay, maybe that was just market's overreacting now against Washington, right? All this money coming in on Washington, great buy low here on Pittsburgh, and then they just have another stinker of a game. So to me, it's just been too consistent of a trend now over time, where they've been barely squeaking out these wins and now losing to Alex Smith against inferior competition. And I think I'm just got to call out the Steelers for what they are right now, rather than looking at the season as a whole. And I think that's always a challenge in sports betting, right? Because do we use this long history of what we have? Because NFL is a very short season in general. You're always going to have a small sample size of games. So it's can we just start dismissing games from earlier in the season? Because that's going to reduce the sample even more. But I don't know. I just don't see the Steelers as anything more than a slightly above average team with the way that they've played over the course of a month now against the Bills team that I think is rounding into form. Maybe I'm falling into that. I don't want to use the word trap here. I definitely
recency bias.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
And I get the look ahead line in this game was Pittsburgh -2.5. So we're talking about over the course of a week. But was the 2.5 the right? Was it I would have bet Buffalo +2.5 last week?
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess the only counter I have for you is if you look at it when the dust settles and you have 16 games, a team performs on a normal distribution generally, which means they have three in the low tail, 3 in the high tail, and 10 in the middle, right? And the Steelers happen to have their 3 in the low tail against the Cowboys, against the Washington football team. And maybe that second game against the Ravens, although that was you box score dive that one, that should have been probably a double digit win for them. So it's maybe their garbage games are behind them. But honestly, they were low motivational spots. Their schedule was completely flummoxed in terms of, actually, we're going to play on a Wednesday during the day, and now a Monday during the day, and guys are coming on and off the COVID list on top of everything, and so I can make excuses for them to a degree. I guess fundamentally the question is, if you think the performances recently are more indicative of who they are at their core, that this isn't a 12-win team. This is a team that's 8, 9, and 7-win team. They just have lucked into the world's easiest schedule this season. I mean, that's a different argument. But I think still, I think you have an average quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, and you have exceptional pieces around him everywhere except for the running back position.
Yeah,
it's a good debate. Really good debate. And look, I mean, sorry.
I close -3 right now, right? I'm not rushing to the window to bet a -3 versus what we've seen last week, but I feel confidently enough that the Bills are going to score points in this game. That's where I think the Bills are going to move the ball on the Steelers defense, because the Steelers defense has been going up against bad offenses just in general, bad quarterback play, and they're facing a real quarterback this week with a real offensive coordinator and key defensive injuries. So I think the Bills are going to score points. That probably gets the Steelers into a game state where they have to throw and stretch things a little bit more. I personally like Bills in the over in this game, but like probably the over more so now than laying a flat 3 as it stands.
But it's very interesting what you say there. So look ahead was Bills +2.5 to -3. So we've gone 5.5 points. But look at the game on Monday night, also involving the Bills. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I could be totally wrong here, but they were good favorites. Were they 2 or 3 point favorites there and then went off? Were they slight dogs as well?
Yeah,
so,
that didn't make any sense.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it can go the other way. So look, a good debate there. And also people are getting involved on YouTube here from Clint Richardson. I knew Drew would talk sense to the recency bias in the line. But a counterpoint from Leonard Welch. Bills are a better team. Suma's right, rolling with them. So look.
Well, I guess here's to wrap it back to our in-play discussion from the top of the show. If you like the Bills, I mean, clearly, is this going to be one-way action? They have the perfect game script coming out and they get a 7-point lead and this is one-way Bills? Or is this going to be a back-and-forth type of game where they have to come back at some point? They've shown the ability to do that this season. Are you better off at this point now that we know that the pregame line has potentially drifted into a place where there's only value on Pittsburgh, but you don't want that side? Are you better off waiting and trying to grab Bills live?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a good question. Like if I'm guessing what the Steelers are going to do in this game, I'm guessing they're going to try to drop some sort of game plan where they're going to try to run the ball on Buffalo, because that seems to be the way that teams try to beat the Bills. I don't think that's going to work. I think that's going to lead to a situation where the Bills are going to get out to a lead in the game, and then the Steelers are forced to open it up and get away from the conservative offense, which honestly, I don't know if that's going to have success or not. I don't know if Ben is capable of hanging in the pot. Like, he's not taking sacks because he throws the ball within a second every time he drops back. Can he hang back there and take a beating now? Escape pressure? I don't know, but I'm trying to get out of the recency bias mind. I really am. And maybe, like, I've been burned by the Steelers as well, and you have to kind of take that out of the equation. But I see Buffalo being such a more complete team than Pittsburgh right now.
But Rob, it's a good point. It's a small sample size, and we do have to be reactive in an NFL season. So you can't really sit in your hands either at the same time. Terrific debate as ever, guys. We better move on. We'll be here for the night. Indianapolis Colts, Las Vegas Raiders. I only pay these guys for the hours, so we got to keep going. The Colts on the money line available at 1.65. The Raiders at 2.41. Raiders getting a 3-point start, just under 1.9, and 51.5 is the total. And Rob Pizolla, I start with you here first. I mean, if we look at the last 2 games for the Raiders, they laid an absolute egg in Atlanta. Then they go on the road up to New York. And let's be honest about it. They just got away with that. They had a massive four-quarter letdown, as Drew Dinsick knows only too well. And, Greg Williams gave them a massive assist. But with those 2 performances, Rob, we may be just getting a bit of a smidgen of value here on the Raiders at home with getting 3.
Yeah, I would agree that the Raiders are a buy point at 3. And I know it's hard to have any degree of confidence in them for the reasons you mentioned. I mean, decimated by the Falcons, Hail Mary to beat the Jets. That's ugly. Like you start to question whether these are the Raiders that we expected going into the season. Because we did a complete 180 on this team after a month, right? No one really had any expectations of them going in. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, this offense is really good. And when, you think back to it, this is the only team in the league that has beaten the Chiefs and the Saints this year, arguably the top 2 teams in football. So this, to me, is still a very good football team that is probably played at the low end of their range recently. And I look on the other side of things. I'm not a big believer in the Colts. And to me, there's not many quarterbacks in the league that are more reliant on pass protection than Phillip Rivers. I mean, he's a statue in the pocket. We saw this with his years in the Chargers, but when he's under any sort of duress, it's not going to work well. 2 weeks ago, Ryan Kelly was out at center for them, and they lost Anthony Costanzo mid-game in that. And after those first 2 touchdown drives against Tennessee, they really didn't move the ball effectively at all after that. They bogged down on offense. Last week, a decent offensive output against Houston in the first half on the surface. But when we compare that relative to what Houston has allowed as a defense over the course of the year, it's really a below average output against that defense. That was without Anthony Costanzo again. They lose their backup tackle, LaRaven Clark, for the year as well. So, yes, the Raiders have a bad defense. I completely get it. We can talk about that till we're blue in the face. But statistically speaking, if you look at their EPA per play, their DVOA, they're better than the Titans defense and the Texans defenses, which were both able to hold the Colts to an average offensive output over the last couple of weeks. And now you get the Raiders with Trent Brown back on the offensive line, which is going to bolster that for them. I think more of an aggressive game plan here because to run on the Colts anymore. And I think if the Raiders try to do that early on in the game, especially without Josh Jacobs, with like Jalen Richard and Devontae Booker, it's not going to work. So I see the Raiders opening it up here, and I think that there's a path to success for them throwing the ball against this Colts team. So, I mean, I see this as a game that should be lying closer to a pick'em here. I'm not completely in love with the Raiders, but the Colts, to me, extreme false win last week against Houston with Deshaun Watson fumbling the snap on essentially the goal line there. I'm not big on Indianapolis right now and moving forward with the state of their tackle situation.
Suma, you going to take the home dog here?
At 3, I would lean towards the Raiders. If the total ticks a little bit down, I think I would be just a tiny bit more interested in the over. I think what Rob said about the Colts offense, everything is true about that. They are an average offense at best at this point. However, I just watched the Raiders-Jets game this morning, and the Raiders defense, without Jonathan Abram and without Damon Arnett, who got injured on the second play of the game, they made the Jets offense look like a top 10 unit at some of those drives. And I think Phillip Rivers with Frank Reich, even without an NFL quality left tackle, they should be able to put together some touchdown drives against this Raiders defense. On the other side, like Rob said, Trent Brown is coming back. That Raiders offense can play like a top 10 unit on any given Sunday. And I think the Colts defense is also kind of overrated at this point. I think if Derek Carr has an average to above average day, they can easily put up points against that Colts defense that plays a lot of zone coverage. I think John Gruden will call the right passing plays to counter those cover 2 zone looks. And I think then you have all the ingredients for a solid play on the over. Raiders games are averaging 50 or close to 57 points per game this season. And that's with the crazy wind game at Cleveland, where we had 22 points. So I think Damon Arnett has a concussion. He won't be back this week probably. I think Jonathan Abram is still likely to be out. I don't really see how either defense gets enough stops to keep this game very low scoring. At 3, I would lean Raiders. I made this game, I think, 1.5 or 2. So line value on the Raiders at 3. But if this total comes a little bit down, I would probably take the over.
What would it need to come down for you to play it? It's 51.5 at the moment.
51 is probably a buy point, yes.
Okay, 51 the buy point for Suma. Drew, what are you thinking here, Matt?
Yeah, I feel like we could have flipped positions, and I could have said exactly that exact breakdown. I feel 100% that the value is on the over and on the Raiders, but I'm hesitant to take either one for all the reasons noted. I guess if it's weird, this is like the 7th or 8th week in a row that the Colts have been like a 3-point favorite. Like every single week for some reason they're in they're right around 3. And they're winning a lot of these games. They're covering a lot of these games. And, I would tip my hat to Frank Reich because he's one of the better coaches in the league in terms of in-game decision making, and it's cool to see that he can elevate a roster that has such questionable quarterback play and has been dealing with lots of important injuries, and he's got his defense coaching up to where they're performing at a top 5 level, even though the roster is clearly middle of the pack. The Colts continue to overperform, the Raiders continue to underperform, so that's scaring me off of taking the Raiders on the money line here, even though the number I don't think is fair. The Raiders were up by 11 in that fourth quarter against the Jets, and I am still in shock that they let that game slip away to where they were down by 4. Some of the stuff that happened was wild. They stop a 2-point conversion, but get a phantom call to get another crack at a 2-point conversion so that they're down by 3. And then the Jets, then they immediately get a fluky fumble in the middle of the field that didn't look like it was forced by anyone, and the Jets get another touchdown. It was like, how in the hell did you do this? Like, what just happened here? And then sure enough, they drive the field. They can't get the touchdown on fourth down. A couple really weirdly officiated plays at the end of that one. And then to see it all manifest with that huge bomb to Ruggs on the 0 blitz was just wild. I don't know what you take away from that game other than, the Raiders escaped. They're still alive in the playoff hunt. There's still, Gruden can get this team motivated potentially to play. And, they had 2 weeks on the road and they're finally back at home, maybe with the full week of practice, with the full, a little bit, guys continue to come back. They're getting healthier. I think if you're going to make a play on this game, it's Raiders or nothing. But given the fact that you're going up against Frank Reich and a Raiders team that can be sloppy at times, I'm going to end up passing on this one.
Yeah, probably a Colts defensive staff who won't do what the Jets did on Sunday night. Just a hunch. All right, let's move on. Kansas City take on the Miami Dolphins in Miami early Sunday evening. Current betting and Matchbook at the time of recording. Back to Chiefs just under 1.31. Miami Dolphins 3.9. Dolphins getting a 7-point start, just even money there, 2.0. 49.5 is the total. Drew, stay with you, mate. What are you thinking here? I mean, look, Chiefs. I thought this line would actually come down. It looks like it's kind of heading back towards maybe 7.5. But what are you thinking, man?
I'm in at 7.5 on the Dolphins. Doesn't feel great.
Yeah, well, especially when it's 7 or no. Yeah.
Every time I bet against the Chiefs, I think of what Rob Pizolla said earlier this season, where it's something like, "There's lots of other ways you can make money in the NFL besides fading Pat Mahomes." That said, this is Week 14 card overall is really tough. I'm only seeing value in a couple of spots. I make this game 6.5. I saw 7.5. I can capture the key number 7. I took it. I don't love the matchup. We haven't really seen the Dolphins play up in a while. I guess that's something positive. This is a big game for them. The Dolphins are on the fringe of the playoffs here. They're still in the hunt for the AFC East. If they have any tricks in their playbook, if they have any wrinkles, if they have anything they've seen in practice that they've liked that Tua is doing, I expect we will see it. This is kind of one where you empty your playbook to get the win because you can't afford to lose this game if you're the Miami Dolphins. Whereas the Chiefs are consistently playing down to their opponents throughout this entire season. I do, and in the back of my head, looking at their schedule, Chiefs got a big game next week. They're playing the New Orleans Saints. To the degree that they may be, still, keeping the good plays in the playbook for, the big competition. I don't think it's the Dolphins. I think it's the Saints. And whether they get a perfectly clean game plan, perfectly clean week of practice, they go down to South Florida and really show off. I mean, obviously that's where they won the Super Bowl last year. Maybe there's some good feelings there. Maybe they come out and everybody plays their best game. But there is enough that Miami does well in pass defense that I think they can, limit this from getting out of control, limit this from turning into a, 2-3 score deficit. And in general, the way to attack the Miami defense is on the ground. And the Chiefs haven't really shown an ability to manifest much of a running game, regardless of who's getting the ball. So I don't know that the Chiefs can truly punish Miami where they are poor defensively, and vice versa. I think the Chiefs are going to have a tough time getting pressure. Miami offensive line is continuing to play better and better and better. And, you know, Tua is not progressing especially quickly. He has a lot of weaknesses. He has a lot still to learn about being an NFL quarterback, but they have a decent amount of weapons around him in this passing game. Mike Gesicki is developing a little chemistry with Tua, which is exciting. And I think that in general, I have a ton of questions about the Chiefs defense. So I'm going to take the 7.5 points here. I don't think Miami can win, but I do think this comes down to fourth quarter execution, and the Chiefs probably squeak one out.
Suma, what do you think in this one?
I like the Chiefs here, opposite of Drew. Obviously not at -7.5, but I think it's currently available at a expensive -7. I think that the Dolphins defense is built in a very specific way, kind of like the Browns offense. They have a very solid secondary with good cornerback play. They have kind of a weak front seven, and they try to scheme up their pressure with diverse blitz packages and try to man up their cornerbacks on the opposing wide receivers and try to confuse quarterbacks and get into their mind and make them get off their first read and hold the ball, etc. pp. However, Patrick Mahomes has a 92 passing grade and about 0.5 EPA per dropback when he faces a blitz this year. He has torched the Bucs defense. He has torched the Ravens defense. Both defenses play in basically the same style like the Dolphins on defense. And the Dolphins have shown that this is basically the only way to show up a really good performance. And these performances and this style of defense usually tends to work against bad quarterbacks. They have basically shut down opposing quarterbacks who are average at best, like Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, last week, Brendan Allen, Sam Darnold. But against the likes of Josh Allen and Russell Wilson, they didn't stand any chance and conceded 30 points easily. So I think that the Chiefs' passing offense should have no business moving the ball through the air. And then it becomes very interesting because game script-wise, I also think that the Chiefs have an advantage here because the Dolphins have such a weak front seven. They cannot stop the run at all. And the Chiefs have been very good at running the ball on early down. So when they jump a lead, and which is, in my opinion, very likely, the Chiefs should have a very easy path to get their run game going in the second half and kill the clock. And on the other side, I don't really think that we have seen enough from Tua Tagovailoa that we can suggest that he's going to toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes when he's likely going to score 30 points. Steve Spagnuolo is, in my opinion, one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. The pass defense of the Chiefs has been very solid this year and also last year. He will find ways to attack that weak offensive line and to get pressure on Tua Tagovailoa. And I just don't see the Dolphins offense keeping pace with Patrick Mahomes in this one. I know the Chiefs didn't really play up to their spreads in recent weeks, but I think this is a very good spot matchup-wise, and I would be very comfortable laying 7 here.
Rob, Drew's already locked in Miami plus 7.5. Suma likes the Chiefs -7. Fancy breaking the tie for me?
I wish I could, but I really can't. Like, I think this is pretty close to the right number for me. The one thing I will say is Miami's defense is largely propped up by the amount of takeaways that they forced. They forced 21 takeaways this year, which is second in the league. And as Suma mentioned, the majority of those have come against bad quarterbacks in general. But you look on the other side of the ball, the Chiefs offense only has 8 giveaways this season, which is the lowest mark in the league, tied with the Titans. And this isn't just like some anomaly this year. This has been the case for them under Patrick Mahomes. They don't turn the ball over a lot. They had 15 turnovers in 16 games last year as well. So I kind of feel like Miami needs to steal some possessions or get some extra possessions in this game in order to keep it closer. And I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to get that. But with that said, like, it's very difficult to evaluate Tua right now, right? I mean, we have a very limited sample. There's been some very good, some very bad. In fact, if you look at last week's game against Cincinnati, we had some very bad in the first half and we had some very good in the second half. So it's not even been consistent on a per game basis. But if you look at EPA per play this year, there's 40 quarterbacks in the league that have had 100 or more dropbacks. Tua is in them right now, and he ranks 25th out of those 40 quarterbacks, so slightly below average. But he's pretty much almost exactly tied with Gardner Minshew and Cam Newton. So if I take a step back and I ask myself, would I take 7.5 points at home with the Dolphins defense and one of Gardner Minshew or Cam Newton as the quarterback? I don't know. It makes it even more complex for me, or just hard to rationalize. I do subjectively feel like it's a good matchup for the Chiefs. I also don't think you can ignore the fact that they've been playing closer games this year in general. Like, this was a team that historically, with Mahomes, was a covering machine. Not even close. And now all of a sudden, we're just not seeing. I don't want to give you the lame sports and the killer instinct or whatever, but we're not seeing it. They've been struggling to completely separate from teams. So I'll be very surprised if I end up on this game. KC -7 plus 100. I might consider betting that, but not much else.
Yeah, it's 1.9 currently. Kansas City -7. Probably going to be getting bet further. All right, gentlemen. We've got a lot of comments come in on our live broadcast. We're a small bit over time. I wish we could get to all of them. But like I mentioned at the top, if you do want to give your opinions, let us know. Matchbook.com/promo/survey. There is the link on screen if you're watching us. If you're listening to us on the podcast, it will be in the podcast bio, so fear not. You don't even have to listen to what I was saying. Quick recap of what we have there, guys. We haven't got much, but there's a bit of differing opinion, which is great. I love that. Ravens, Browns over 45.5. And I'll be honest, I'm going to put in over 51 in Colts Raiders, and I know it's 51.5. It's currently 1.8 at 51 at Matchbook. Not a great price, but I do see the way that line is moving that it may actually come back towards 51. So I'm going to preemptively do that. As I said, we're a small bit over time, but Drew, normally you would give us maybe one elsewhere. Anything else currently at the price?
I haven't played much this week. I only have two other plays on my card. I played the under in the Seattle New York Jets game. I'm under 47 in there. 47s and 46s around. I think that's still a fair price. I make that game 44.5. And I also took another stinky dog. Took the points with the with the Philadelphia Eagles against the Saints. I'm hopeful I didn't fall into this
Jalen Hurts angle or.
Yeah, that and, third straight road game for New Orleans. Yeah. You may be throwing Drew Brees back out there with broken ribs in a cold weather. That's not an ideal spot for the Saints. You're looking, they're potentially looking ahead to the Kansas City Chiefs too. I'm just not sure how New Orleans continues to play up. The 3 straight weeks where they've played up in the absence of Drew Brees. Now, if he comes back, which I'm expecting he will, chance that kind of everybody's like, oh, Drew Brees is back. Okay, we're back. We're gonna, and we're 7-point favorites. We're going up against the Eagles here, who are terrible. And honestly, anything other than Carson Wentz is an upgraded quarterback at this point. So I'll take the 7. I took the 7.5 points. It's at 7 most places now. I think that's still a fair play at +7. I'd actually, realistically, maybe wait until the Drew Brees news is confirmed because it'll go back to 7.5.
That's a good point. Sommer, Rob, any of you want to add a vote of confidence to Drew's 2 selections there?
I like the under that he mentioned. Seattle, Pete Carroll makes me die of laughter. Like this, we can't get our offense going. So what are we going to do? We're going to have to run the ball more. Like the quotes from Pete Carroll, and I look at the Seahawks season, and when they excelled at offense, they were throwing the ball heavily on early downs, and they have a bad game where Russell Wilson turns it over a bunch, and all of a sudden they've morphed back into this run-first offense. I think it lends itself to the under for sure there. So I don't mind that. I'm also keeping my eye on the total in Houston and Chicago, depending on the weather conditions, because it could be a wind game. But if it's not, I really like that over. quite a bit because the Bears defense is not what it was, and the Bears offense is not what it was. Like, the Bears have completely changed as a team to an over profile, in my opinion. So 45 or less, if win conditions are not too bad, I think that's a flying over the total.
You know what, Drew, hat tip to you as well on the Bears Lions. That was a really good look on the over there as well, Drew, last week, man. That was a terrific look. Thank you for that one. Yeah, absolutely. I think we all did. So look, I'm just gonna add in another one there. 46.5, fair enough total under for the Jets, Seattle guys, or is the number gone? 46.
No, I would have liked it 47, but 44.5 is fair. And
Okay, let's add that as pick number 3. Right,
exactly the same way that Rob mentioned. The profile for the Bears is flipped. The profile for the Seahawks is flipped too.
Yeah. Yes.
They were a flying over team. Their defense is greatly improved, and their offense is shooting themselves in the foot. It's crazy to see.
They absolutely were. Right, we missed this for the last 2 weeks. Week 14 top dogs. Drew, you said that you liked a few dogs, so let's you kick us off. No pressure. The money line dog this week that could get us into the profit. Right. What do you think?
There's one money line dog price that is just impossible to reconcile, and it's the biggest one on the board, and it's the New York Jets. Seattle. I don't know how many more games we need to see in the Pete Carroll Seattle era. They play coin flips. Doesn't matter the opponent. They could be going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a coin flip. They could be going up against the New York Jets. It's a coin flip. On top of all of that, Rob's points are extremely relevant. If they roll out a rushing attack against the Jets, that's the one thing this defense can do well. And speaking of what the defense can do well, they just got rid of the cancer that is Greg Williams. So the likelihood that this defense plays a little bit inspired, I think, is real. And the offense for the Jets, the passing offense especially, is starting to click. You saw, you're seeing some emergence of, the chemistry between Darnold and Crowder is there. I can entirely see the Jets playing this one very close and the game execution mattering. The fact that if the Seahawks can lose to the Giants at home, they can lose to the Jets at home.
Rob, lay it on me. That shocked me. The Jets shocked me, Rob. So you're not going to shock me, no?
Well, this is going to be the ugliest, maybe the ugliest top dog parlay we've ever had here.
It's the biggest price,
might finally win one,
Coming off the 45-0 shutout loss, I will go with the Chargers against Atlanta. Mostly because I don't think the Falcons are deserving of the price tag of road favorite. I mean, look at Atlanta right now. They score touchdowns on only 50% of their trips into the red zone. There are only 2 teams worse in the league. That's the Jets and the Giants. The Falcons do not put teams away or separate themselves because their red zone offense is horrible. And the Chargers, I don't like Anthony Lynn. I will give the offense somewhat of a pass last week going up against Belichick and that scheme. They're not going to be facing a defensive coordinator or defense that's going to confuse them a whole lot, just in general. I'm not saying the Chargers light it up completely. I still have some concerns there. But this, to me, is a game that we're getting an underdog price tag on the Chargers, and I'm not sure that should be the case.
All right, Suma, round off the treble. What's your top dog?
Very tough one, but I'm going with the Raiders here for top dog.
Okay, well, let's take a look at it on screen. That treble matchbook. There you go. The Jets finally in a money dog treble. Raiders Chargers 21.82.
Trying to win back all the losses from earlier this year on the treble in one shot.
One shot, but look, I think anyone who's backing them individually has definitely made money on those. Okay, guys, let's move on. We're almost out of time. Week 14, top dogs. Jordan said, kick us off.
Oh, man. I'm going to go with
confidence. Love it.
I hate this card. I'm going to take Philly at +7.
All right. Eagles +7 for Drew. Rob Pizolla, best bet for week 14.
Wow. It goes without saying. I completely agree with Drew. This is not a great card. Let me go ahead and make a square symbol right here so everyone can see that. I'm going to lay 7.5 points with the Packers against the Lions. I do not see how the Detroit defense generates a single stop in this game. I don't know what their path to success is to stopping Devontae Adams and this passing attack, I think the Packers are going to roll.
All right. Suma, best bet for week 14, man.
I have to go with the Bills here. I bet it at -2. What's the price tag for -2.5 right now?
1.9. So look, it's a 10 to 11 shot. Like, so.
Oh yeah. Let's take that. Yeah.
Bills -2.5 for Suma. All right, like we said, not a terrific week 14, but I find sometimes with these weeks when we're going in with a lot of pessimism, they tend to be better than we think.
I agree.
Yes.
Like, sometimes I love my card.
You're a little more discerning.
I think there's a couple of weeks there, the last couple of weeks, we've loved our card from what we've picked up from this pod, and it hasn't gone so well. All right, gents, we're out of time, and we've probably gone over time. Drew, thanks to you. Rob, thanks to you. Suma, thanks to you as well. Don't forget, check us out, the content survey in the bio of the podcast. Let us know what you think, and of course, be nice, or try to be nice, but obviously, we appreciate the feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Best of luck with your week 14 bets, and we'll talk to you next Thursday.